I've always liked the idea of owning a watch that contains a tourbillon movement. I think it's pretty, I think it's elegant, I think it's something that is really nice, that really captures my attention, but I never considered actually owning one. And I never actually considered owning one because, well, the cost of the watches that these contain tend to be rather expensive. So I always put them on a different list, a list of watches that I like, but I'm never going to own. But of course, like most watches, designs and even movements, they are being copied or at least being created in a much cheaper format, and they are being released on a website that we know as Aliexpress. Something that is absolutely amazing to find all sorts of things, and it also includes tourbillon watches. I started seeing them coming out a few years ago, but if I be completely honest, the watches that they were within didn't really capture my attention. I like the idea that you could get a semi-affordable tourbillon watch, but they weren't in a watch that I'd want to own. But I've gone back and had another look now that they've been coming out for a while, and I'm starting to see that there are not just tourbillon watches available on Aliexpress, but there's some very nice looking tourbillon watches on Aliexpress. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches, and I'm talking about 10 tourbillon watches that I found on Aliexpress that just aren't tourbillon watches. They're really good looking tourbillon watches, but please be mindful, I've actually never had hands on with any of these, so I can't tell you that they're amazing. I can't tell you that you should definitely buy them. All I can do, however, is draw your attention to them because my attention has been drawn towards them. And well, I think maybe you might find that interesting as well. I am going to leave affiliate links to all the watches in the description of this video, but I'm not really expecting you to jump out there and buy them because even though they are on Aliexpress and they are more affordable, well, these watches do also tend to be still a little bit more expensive. But I think it's quite interesting just to be aware of them, have the understanding of what's available, and that is my intent to do today, to share with you 10 awesome looking watches, 10 watches that I may actually consider in the future, or at least maybe one of them, because I still like the idea of having a tourbillon, even if I have to spend that little bit of extra money. But it's nice to know that they are there, and it's nice to know that there's some really good looking options, and I'm going to share them with you right now. So I'm not really going to be talking about the price of these watches at all today. You'll see the prices there. They give us a little bit of context about what they are and how much they are costing, but it's not really the point of this video. The point of this video is to look at some very cool watches that are now available on Aliexpress. And if you do think they're expensive, well, go searching for Swiss-made tourbillons and you might see that, well, the prices are actually fairly low, but I'm not really specifically expecting you to buy them. But maybe they are worth considering because there are some very good looking watches and I'm going to be showing you 10 of them. And well, let's start right now, shall we? And let's start with one that, well, I think that looks brilliant. Okay, yes, it's $2,500 Australian dollars, but let's forget that. As I said, it is a, well, it's not just a tourbillon watch, but it is a day-night indicator, it has a power reserve, and it has, well, the offset sort of dial there. This reminds me a lot of the sort of very high-end watches, not just the tourbillon watches, because you'll see a lot of watches that are at that very high luxury market do this, like the MBMF and all those sort of style of watches. I think for the money, you're getting something quite interesting. I actually quite like this sort of style. It's quirky, it's fun, it's different. Okay, yes, very expensive, and I'm not sure if I'd ever spend that on an Aliexpress watch, but it is very interesting to see what exactly is available on Aliexpress. And just to see exactly what they call it the Flying Tourbillon with a 60-hour power reserve. It's a high beat movement, single spring drive, so it's only one sort of a barrel there, manual winding, 42 millimeters, which is actually quite interesting. I saw that and I expected that to be absolutely massive, but that's actually not too bad. Even with a 13 millimeter width, it's quite, yeah, I think that's funny. I definitely would wear that if I bought that. However, I just don't foresee myself buying it at that sort of price, which is a shame because how cool would that be to own? I would certainly like it. It'd be really interesting to know exactly what it is like in hand. It has some really interesting features. It's like with some cutaways in there. I think the Chinese sort of market with sort of watches like this, it's amazing what they can actually do for the price. I'm not saying that it is perfect. And oh, look at that. See, that's mother of pearl. There's mother and pearl inlay there, mother and pearl on the power reserve there. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of positives there. It does cost a lot of money, but it shows you what can be bought from Aliexpress. Now, a slightly more reserved version of that from Agelocer. These seem to be putting out quite a few of these tourbillon watches as well. It is also a skeletonized watch with a double barrel there with the tourbillon. More of a sort of a simpler style compared to that previous one, but also half the price of this last one. But you can also get it in a heap of colors, black and silver. You can get it in the rose gold or gold. You can get it with blue, and is that diamonds or diamantes or whatever they call those fake diamonds? I don't know. Oh, looks quite good on the bracelet. This is another one that I'd be quite interested to get hands-on with. And I think that's going to be a bit of a theme for this entire video, talking about these interesting watches that I just think look cool. I'd love to get hands-on with, but it's just unfortunate that it's probably unlikely because I just don't want to spend that amount of money on a watch. And another good set of dimensions, a 40mm by 47, has a 9.7mm thickness. Wow, that's quite amazing, isn't it? So I know if you bought one of these, and I think people have bought them before, and I think I've seen some videos about them, people are rather impressed by them. The name's a little bit interesting, but I think people are rather impressed by them, and I can see why. I probably wouldn't buy this specific model because of this skeletonized dial. You can actually see your wrist through it if that was on top of your wrist, and that's not something that really interests me. But the size looks good, has 80 hours of power reserve. Check that out. Yeah, it's amazing. And look at the movement as well. That's beautiful. Okay, let's get to the next one. A slightly more affordable version from Aesop, $620. Okay, so you can get slightly affordable versions, lots of different color variations. This one looks more like just like an open heart version of a watch, I guess, but it is actually a tourbillon movement. You can see it there. You can see the little tourbillon wheel, so that will slowly go around and around in circles, which I think is actually quite nice. It's not something that I find as interesting as the last two, but I certainly do appreciate the price more than the last two. It's also a reasonable size as well. 42mm, 12mm thick, has a sort of a 3 Hertz movement there, 55 hours of power reserve, manual chain. Yeah, so you're getting some good power reserve. They're getting some positives. I think that looks like a nice, decent watch as well. Certainly a much more reasonable price, but it's probably one of the least desirable sort of looks or styles that I've picked today. This one, however, well, this might actually be one of my favorites of the list today because it's still sort of reasonably priced, just under $800. Also from Aesop, but it has a much nicer look to it. This one does look a very Moser-esque, I guess. Has tourbillon written on the dial, which is not perfect, but it's not horrendous either. Lots of different variations too. There's a gold, gold on gold, almost like a rose gold. I like silver and black. That would be the one that I'd choose. Silver dial version, all sorts of variations of it. I do think that looks absolutely stunning, but let's see what sort of size it is, see whether it's actually a wearable size too. Oh, before we get to size, look at that case back. That's gorgeous. Yeah. I think some of these sort of Chinese-made tourbillon movements, I'm not overly sure of the quality of them. I'm assuming they're okay because they are making some reasonable movements, but what they are doing is making a very good-looking movement. All right, here's the dimensions and things that I could find. 100 meters of water resistance, 43mm. Oh, that puts me off a little bit. That really sort of deserved a 40mm. That's unfortunate. 40 hours of power reserve, but it is a high beat version of that tourbillon. This one for me kind of blends that first watch and maybe some of the others because it's a slightly more reasonable price, but it still has some of these rather interesting features of the offset dial, has the moon phase, there is a 24-hour dial there. Oh, is that the date? No, that's not the date. I honestly don't know. The tourbillon. And have a look at the pattern on that dial. Different colors available, blue, different case colors as well. Yeah, I like the blue. That's the one that I'd probably choose. Not too bad a price. Let's see what the dimensions are. And also have a quick look at that movement. Not quite as pretty, but still, I quite like that. I'd be quite happy to look at that every day. Oh, let's just have a quick look at this render or this picture at the moment because it does show you the case a little bit better. I do quite like what they've done behind it. I think there's a couple of other watches that I like that have these little sort of sub-dials and things, and I don't think they've done that as well. I really quite like that feature. It's fairly simple, but it kind of works, and I like it. All right, this is the best that I could find. 100 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, synthetic sapphire, never quite sure what that means. Only 10.5mm thick or tall, but again, 43mm. I guess with this kind of complication, there's a lot to see, so that could be okay depending what the lug to lug is, and I don't know what the lug to lug is, but it's a high beat movement with also 40 hours of power reserve. This one to me looks like an IWC Portuguese but with a tourbillon, and it's probably one of the most affordable and probably one of the better looking on this list today. This one I've actually considered seriously buying myself because I could justify that price, and I do like the style, and it does come in a couple of different versions of it with Roman numerals and blue background. It comes in more of a salmon version, golden sort of style there. I think I'd probably have to pick that one. I'm not completely impressed by what they've written here with the name Hemudu. I'm not really a big fan of that. And writing tourbillon mechanism. I'm not really a big fan of that. But beyond that, just a nice, simple looking sort of Portuguese-ish style dial with a nice tourbillon there. And a reasonable size as well, 42.5. A little bit big again, high beat movement as you can see, still nice and thin at 10.5 millimeters, only 50 meters of water resistance. But let me see if I can show you a little bit more pictures of this one, because it shows you a little bit of, there's like a granulated dial sort of color there, or patina, and those blue markers stand out with the blue hands. Yeah, I think it's a nice looking watch. It's probably a little bit big. I think that's what's probably stopped me in the past. 42.5, 49. It would fit my wrist. But again, I think 40 would be perfect. But let's just see if we can see the case back of this one. Let's have a look to see what the movement looks like. We're certainly putting a few pictures and things to try and make this seem like a particularly good looking watch. But come on. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I like that. I love the look of that case. See the trainer wheels there and all the gears. See the back of the tourbillon, and they put that nice sort of pattern there. I could definitely live with a case back that looked like that. Another slightly more interesting version, and I quite like interesting watches. 1,000 Australian dollars this time. This time it has a date calendar there, has a power reserve, has your tourbillon, and then skeletonized hands, and you can get it in a gold, or a black dial, or a silver dial, or a now I'm confused. Which one? Oh, I think I like the black dial version better. Can't really see the hands though. Oh well, that's all right. It's $1,000. Let's have a look at the back of it. Ooh, look at that. Now that is pretty. Oh yes, okay, I'll be very happy looking at the back of that one. They're doing some pretty looking movements. I do appreciate that, but I wonder how big this one is. There's another picture of that case back. What a beautiful looking movement. That reminds me a lot of an IWC case back. It goes all the way to the edge, big rotor, Tophill, bit of an interesting name, but let's see if we can find some more pictures of it. Oh yeah, there's some more pictures of it. There's a bit of a granulation to that dial as well. I didn't initially see that. Let's see if we can find some details of the size. I'm guessing this is going to be a slightly bigger version. Here we go. Let's have a look. 45 across. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Is that lug to lug, or is that the diameter of the case? I'm guessing that's going to be the case. Let me try and find something better for you. Oh yes, 45 millimeter case. Okay, so she's a big watch, a big watch, but does have sapphire crystal. It's not particularly thick when you consider the overall size. 72-hour power reserve, manual wind, hybrid winding movement. Because it's automatic and manual. That's a very weird way of saying that it is an automatic movement. I think this is a new release from Merkur. I haven't seen this one before. $508. Has an interesting almost sort of stone sort of dial here. Little sub dial with your actual time, plus the tourbillon movement right there in your face. A couple of different versions of it. Looks like a relatively simple case. It almost looks like opal. Not really my style, but I do appreciate that it is slightly more affordable. I don't mind the Merkur watches. I've had quite a few of them, but I also want to show you this one because I think it's a slightly more wearable size. Yeah, 42 millimeters, 12.5 millimeters tall, and a 48 lug to lug. So a slightly more wearable size, a slightly more affordable price, and just overall quite a neat looking watch. Okay, so this one is, well, it looks very much like a Moser as well. Very simple black dial, tourbillon movement there with a weird looking little jewel there, but it's a 38 millimeter. So this is probably the smallest out of the ones I've shown you today, the most wearable sort of size. Comes in a couple of different colors. The blue, I think the blue looks nice. I think the black looks nice. Green's probably not for me, but let's see. Oh, here we go. It's got a seagull 8000 tourbillon. I think that's actually one of the only times it's actually identified exactly what the tourbillon movement is. But it's a 38mm, only 11.5 millimeters tall, only weighs in at 61 grams too, and a short lug-to-lug of 45 and $888. And I've owned a couple of watches from Sugess before, and the quality has been brilliant. So this one actually might be one of the better ones on the list today, but it is a relatively simple design. But this one has been on the top of my wish list for a couple of years since it came out, and I've been kind of hoping that that price of just over $1,000 would have dropped significantly, because I've been watching this one for, well, at least 2 years, because I've owned a watch from Sugess that has this exact sort of dial, the exact same case. I'm sure it's the exact same case, but the non-tourbillon. I've had a chronograph, which I'm sure it was pretty much exactly the same. So I know that the watch is good quality. It's made out of bronze, and I like the look of this one. And what I do like, I like how they've done the outside of this tourbillon with also this sort of bronze look, which matches into the bronze hands, which matches into the bronze case. Yeah, and there's a couple of different dial variations there. There's sort of a sunburst blue, then there's this granulated green dial. I like the granulated black dial. That's my favorite. And I know it's a relatively large watch, but it's not so large that it doesn't fit me, because it is a 41mm. I know the lug-to-lug on the one that I had was 50, and this one says it's 50 as well. But I want to show you the case back of this one, because I think that would be quite interesting to see this movement. That is a very, very attractive movement. And as I said, this one, more than any other, has been on my list for a very, very long time. And I know the quality is good because, well, I've owned the same watch but a different variation of it, but it's still $1,000, and that is what has stopped me buying this one, which it's actually a little bit of a disappointment, because I'd really like this one, and there's a couple of others that I'm really keen on too, and I'm going to be watching them to see whether or not they drop down in price. I'm kind of fingers crossed that one of these companies might reach out to me one day and offer me one of these, but I'm not holding my breath on that. I'm surprised because I don't think these ones are selling a huge amount because of the price, so I'm surprised they don't really want them to be pushed out a little bit more. But today wasn't so much about getting you guys to buy one of these watches, or even convincing myself to buy one of these watches, although looking at them slightly convinces me a little bit. It was more just showing you what's available, and that there are some actually very good looking tourbillon powered watches on Aliexpress. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, I do appreciate it, and I do make lots of videos, and here's 2 more of them.